All right, Democrats are calling for major changes within their party. And this week in New York, voters sent a clear message. Zohran Mamdani, the 33-year-old self-described Democratic socialist, pulled off a huge upset against Andrew Cuomo and his million-dollar backings in the New York City mayoral primary election. Mamdani won 43.5% to be exact, of first-place votes to Cuomo's 36.3%. And in his speech, he made clear that his run is not just about New York City.
I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City. It's where the mayor will use their power to reject Donald Trump's fascism, to stop mass ICE agents from deporting our neighbors, and to govern our city as a model for the Democratic Party.
And leading up to the primary election, Mamdani grabbed endorsements, big ones, from progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders. But since his win, top Democratic leaders, such as Congressman Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Chuck Schumer, who are both New Yorkers, congratulated Mamdani, but they stopped short of endorsing him. The divide raises major questions about the party's brand nationally as it looks to the midterms and the next presidential election. Former New York Congressman Mondaire Jones is with us. Can't think of a better person to talk to, because you have not only the New York viewpoint of it, but also as a politician who has had to run and thread that needle. What do you make of the Mamdani win? What's your big takeaway from it? Is there a broader lesson for the Democratic Party, or is this a one-off and just should be looked at in the context of purely New York?
So I think two things can be true. One is that New York City is not like the rest of the country, and that the laser focus on affordability that Zohran set forth consistently and with discipline, even when other people were trying to distract him, is something that can be taken anywhere in this country. That it is the number one issue for voters of all political stripes. How are elected officials going to lower the cost of living for me?
Let me pick up on something that you also know very well in relation to this, and that is the leadership of the Democratic Party. We used to have you on the show a lot. I used to ask you about when you were running, did you get the love that you needed from the leadership of the party? As we saw right now, not a lot of love from the Democratic Party leadership, certainly the establishment. You get the AOCs, you get the Bernie Sanders, but you're not getting the leadership of the party saying, hey, you know what, this guy's offering us a template, let's rally behind him, the way that you would see maybe on the Republican side. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Republicans always fall in line.
Yeah.
Even when they say they detest the nominees, they even vote along with them.
As we see with Josh Hawley.
As we're seeing right now in Congress. Look, I think it's hard to be a young person in Democratic politics at this level. And it's even harder to be critical of the establishment. And one of the things that the Democratic nominee now in New York City for mayor should be doing is broadening his coalition. A general election campaign is very different from a primary election campaign, and folks on the far left oftentimes don't think beyond primaries. But now you got to go out there and you have to address your liabilities, and there are a few. But stay focused as well on the cost of living, because that is something.
But on that point, so a lot of people are asking Zohran Mamdani to take meetings. I think those meetings are actually already happening with people who have concerns about his policies. We saw him very strategically work with other candidates like Brad Lander and try to message to very particular communities in the city that he knew might have concerns or questions about his background, his ideas. But then I'm not sure I see the same pressure being applied to other Democrats about actually widening the tent. For example, Senator Gillibrand and some of the comments that she made earlier this week about Zohran Mamdani, sort of suggesting that he supports global jihad on a popular radio show here in the city. It seems to me that there is, on someone like Mamdani, a pressure to show that you are open, going to build relationships and coalitions, but then to the establishment, it seems to be okay to speak to progressives in an incredibly demeaning way, as if they simply don't matter to the rest of the base just in the coalition.
So I agree that Senator Gillibrand's comments were abhorrent in this case, but it's not only expanding the tent in New York City to non-traditional Democratic groups, the unions, the major unions in New York endorsed Cuomo. And that is historically a really important constituency for Democrats. And some of them have changed.
In 2024, but that's not enough. If you were paying attention to the election that just happened, that's not enough.
But it is important.
Unions are now basically established.
I wanted your thoughts on this. Okay. Now the two of us are rambling.
I'm fascinated. Can I co-anchor?
I'll add one thing. Is finance just too big to fail? And you're not going to see establishment Democrats be able to give a bear hug, wrap their arms around him, just because their most valuable donors in the entire political ecosystem are so opposed to Zohran Mamdani.
Well, look, I don't want to read too much into this. The far left was just doing this a few months ago when it came to Kamala Harris and the so-called uncommitted movement and so on and so forth. I wish that politicians would do their research before opining on things about candidates. There are folks who think that Zohran has said certain things that he says that he has never said, for example. Right. And I hope that people familiarize themselves with that before they accuse him of saying things that he hasn't said. At the same time, as someone who also listened to that interview, there was a piece on this phrase that has just become very controversial and understandably is hurtful, I think, to many members of the Jewish community. Globalize the Intifada. Brad Lander has spoken about how when he hears those words, they scare him, and I think Zohran should take that very seriously and at least acknowledge that this means something different than maybe the way other protesters intend to use it, even as he says himself that he has never used those words. I've been hearing that particular phrase a lot this week from people who expressing concern, and so that's why it's sort of top of mind for me. But this speaks to the different challenge in the general election. All right, you got the primary nomination. Now you got to show that you're gonna be a mayor for all people. And to his credit, he has talked about the importance of combating anti-Semitism in this city and in this country. He has connected it with his own experience, all of the bigotry against him, even this week, as a member of the Muslim community. And so I hope that he'll surround himself with people who are going to help him do outreach to the Jewish communities, obviously to broaden his support within the Black community. I saw he was with Al Sharpton this morning at National Action Network. These are some of the things that he should be doing in the general election.
The question that I have, I think, to Antonia's point is the double standard that's applied. You get a young politician of color, certainly of the Muslim faith, he talks about his experience, and the reaction is he's put through a purity test. He has to run through a purity test to convince everybody that he meets their standard of safety, when in reality there is no evidence whatsoever that he ever has espoused anything that is remotely anti-Semitic or even in any way, shape, or form should be considered dangerous. And so we've kind of singularly focused on this issue. And I think about this point in the debate when they ask people, hey, where are you going to go visit as soon as you come out of this mayoral race? And everybody, without missing a beat, said, Israel, Israel, Israel. And he said, I'm here to fight for New Yorkers. I'm going to visit New Yorkers. I mean, put aside whether it should be Israel, whether it should be Dominican Republic, whether it should be Haiti, whether it should be any of the dozens of countries that have large populations, but the singular focus on trying to make and define the candidacy of this young politician who happens to be Muslim through the lens of a singular issue, I think is very disturbing for what it means for our national politics and how politicians all have to act and behave a certain way and expect to give certain answers to certain questions.
Republicans running for office and holding office have weaponized the issue of anti-Semitism, which is a very serious issue in this country. And the FBI data show that there has been an uptick in it. But Republicans who have weaponized it have done so in bad faith, right? Yeah. Because at the same time they're doing that, they're elevating people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Yeah. And they're exacerbating the issue of anti-Semitism in the way that they talk and in the way that they use it as a pretext to deprive people of their constitutional rights in this country. And so I think it's why you see so many people on the Republican side of the aisle accuse so many Democrats of being anti-Semitic, who have disagreements with the actions of the Israeli government, and not create a space for those reasonable disagreements where most American Jews don't agree with Bibi Netanyahu and his.
I feel like we're conflating a bunch of issues here, though. Right? One is these smears against Mamdani for being anti-Semitic or supporting jihad or whatever. And the other is asking him to meet with constituencies in New York who he did not gain the favor of. And the latter, I think, is a totally reasonable request for someone who is on the ballot for mayor. I mentioned.
But I think they're intermingled, because I think one of the points of the smears is to actually make it really hard for him to have those conversations. And
but he's having them.
No,
he's having them.
I said that. I said that moments ago, that he's already having them.
No, but that's a reasonable request.
People who would otherwise be voters who might be interested in hearing him out and listening to him are going to tune him out. That's part of the strategy of smears.
I think
so
most New Yorkers are not.
In my view.
No, most New Yorkers are not casting their vote based on his positions on Gaza. I really don't believe that. They're casting their vote for mayor based on whether the trash gets picked up, whether there are rats around. It's a local race.
I got to say, I slightly disagree with you on that, and we can talk about it more because we're almost out of time, but I do think that they all intersect. I think that when you are the mayor of New York City and you watch what Eric Adams did to the protesters at American universities in the city of New York and allowing the NYPD to go in and arrest people and beat people up, when you're the mayor of New York City, they want to see somebody who stands up and says, I will not allow that to happen in my city. And so the point about Gaza, it's not about what's happening in Gaza. It's about what has Gaza reflected in our divides in this country, and the way the mayor of the largest city, the most diverse city, a truly global city, speaks up about the issues. There is not another mayor in America who has stood up to Tom Homan the way that Zohran Mamdani did when he was running. I can't imagine when he actually does have some power as the mayor of New York City, what he'll be able to do and actually fight against mass deportations. Look, we can talk about this for hours. We're going to continue, and we're going to talk about, and we will. We got a lot more to talk about it.
We got
to absolutely. And you have a standing invite to come back anytime because you are now the new co-host of this show. I don't know if you know that or not. Mondaire Jones, great to see you, my friend. Thank you. I appreciate it.